want to transition to the silver lining of today, perhaps, which is the explosive growth of research and incredible accomplishments of our researchers in the health system. Next slide. University Hospitals has a long history, over 150 years, of pioneering medical research and breakthroughs. It's at the core of our mission to discover and our vision to advance the science of health. Our vision within the research unit is a next generation health system dedicated to accelerating discovery, innovation, and translation of scientific breakthroughs, really to address unmet clinical need in our community. Next slide. Here are the key statistics of our research and education mission. In 2021, our last complete year, we had about 170 million in research expenditures, 983 researchers across the system, generating over 1,300 peer-reviewed articles. We have 3,200 clinical research studies, the largest in Northeast Ohio. We have 90 invention disclosures, and as many of you know, are doing an amazing job in the COVID area with over 264 clinical studies leading the way. Next slide. We perform the full spectrum of research activities at university hospitals with very important strategic partners: scientific discovery, drug, device, and diagnostic development, clinical research, and now, as a great focus, health outcomes or health service research to really impact our community. And what I'd like to do now is unpack those and show you incredible achievements since I last spoke to you at our State of Research address in April of 2022. Next slide. One thing that's really important to emphasize are the importance of partnerships in research. We have key local partnerships with Case Western Reserve and with other partners within this community, the Institute for Computational Biology, the Center for AIDS Research, the Cleveland Alzheimer's Disease Center, and others, all spearheaded now very strongly by our CTSC that I'll talk about a little bit later. We have very important statewide partnerships, Jobs Ohio in our Innovation District, a new and very strong affiliation with Neomed to provide us with a pipeline for the future, workforce training and development, and we will highlight that momentarily. And now, of course, we have global partnerships. Our critical relationship with the University of Oxford, the #1 global university for rare disease with the Harrington Discovery Institute, a partnership with Morgan Stanley Gift Cures, the nonprofit part of the Morgan Stanley Bank to advance our discoveries, and new relationships with the Technion Institute of Technology of Israel, and a very exciting under development newest affiliation with National Taiwan University College of Medicine in Asia. Next slide. One of the things that we're most proud of is our reaffiliation agreement in 2021, which established a very effective effort and organizational structure called the Joint Strategic Leadership Committee to recruit and retain the best and brightest scientists across the country. This is a joint committee between the medical schools, Stan Gerson, co-led by me, with faculty leadership from Dr. Robert Salata, our chair of medicine, Lynn Mai, the chair of neuroscience, and others listed here. You can see that this committee has jointly invested a target of $4 million a year to recruit incredible scientists: Rebecca Obang to pathology for lung cancer research, Randy Vince for urology research, and many others. Our latest, Dr. Bora, a PhD from Australia, recruited by Marlene Miller, you can see just in November of 2022, to focus on neurodevelopment from NICU babies. Importantly, we've also used these funds to retain our stars: Amitabh Chak, our esophageal cancer expert, Reshmi for multiple myeloma, Jim Basilian as an example for radiology, and Andrew Pieper for traumatic brain injury and dementia. So this effort is working to attract the greatest and to retain those. Next slide. I want to highlight and really call out Grace McCompsey, the new PI of the CTSC from Case Western. This is an organization which drives clinical and translational research. It has brought in over $178 million in research funding, currently $8 million per year. We want to wish Grace the best of luck on her renewal submission, which she just sent in September 22nd, looking for $70 million over 7 years. This is going to focus very importantly on catalyzing the linkages to equity in health, addressing health inequities and disparities, $70 million over 7 years. Good luck, Grace. Next slide. Our Jobs Ohio program is a key program related to ultimately creating jobs in the biomedical ecosystem in Cleveland, partners with CCF, CWRU, CSU, and Metro. UH is focusing on research and product innovation. We're knocking it out of the park. About to open October 2022, our new expanded immunotherapy and research lab space, an $8.3 million investment, which is going to create state-of-the-art labs for CAR-T. We're creating jobs. We're expanding research expenditures, exceeding our targets, and are very pleased to have been supported by a $30 million investment from our board in direct research and drug development activities. Next slide. Want to spend just a moment highlighting our new UH Neomed affiliation. This is a 5-year affiliation agreement to strengthen the UH workforce, both in primary care, pharmacy, anesthesia assistants, and technicians. We are very committed to our 125-year relationship with Case Western Reserve University, but it's important to note of their 193 graduates, only 40 stay in Ohio for residency, only 24 in Northeast Ohio. 60 to 70% of the Neomed graduates do their residencies here and stay in primary care. This is very important for our growth. There are 6 key areas of collaboration: education, innovation, research, faculty development, workforce development, and clinical activities. And these are led by these phenomenal UH leaders pictured here: Deb Leisman, our new VP of Education and DIO, Ken Simons, Grace McCompsey, Neil Wyant, David Sylvan, Marjorie Greenfield, George Topolsky, and our CNE, Michelle Hereford. Next slide. Now let's spend just a moment. I want to share with you just phenomenal discoveries within the research effort by our physician scientists. Next slide. I first would like to call out and really want to congratulate our radiology research group and our MR Research Center of Excellence. Donna Pletcha's work here, along with this amazing team, has been nothing short of miraculous. Since January 2021, we have garnered $38 million in extramural support from the NIH and from foundations, as you can see here. A great group that is really driving the latest in MRI technologies in breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, and in glioblastoma and others. Next slide. Fabio Caminelli leads our Digestive Health Research Institute. I've talked about this group, one of our strongest before, with an increase in NIH funding from 17 million to 28 million in 2021, but really want to highlight their latest work, which has been noticed across the country, which is support from the National Institutes of Minority Health and Health Disparities to support the enrollment of LGBTQ patients with GI inflammatory disease in a new P30 grant. This is really important because Fabio's team has identified that gay men are 2 times more likely to have inflammatory bowel disease, according to his new research studies. This is extremely important as we move forward in our community. Next slide. This is really an important highlight of Jordan Winter. Jordan has been discovering mechanisms of pancreatic cell cancer and has identified a new target. As many of you know, 5-year survival in pancreatic cancer is less than 5%. As a result of this seminal paper published in Nature Cancer in 2022, Jordan Winter has received a $1.5 million grant from the Gateway Foundation and from John and Peggy Garson to fund a clinical trial led by David Bajor to treat 15 patients with resectable pancreatic cancer with this new drug from Dr. Winter's laboratory studies called ivosidenib, along with conventional therapy. This has prolonged survival in mice, and now Jordan Winter is positioned to determine whether this will prolong cancer survival in his patients. Good luck, Jordan. Next slide. And finally, within scientific discovery, I want to call out our latest and newest center that we have in collaboration with Case Western. Bob Salata and I have come together to appoint Ken Remy to lead a new UH Blood, Heart, Lung, and Immunology Research Center. Really a multi and interdisciplinary effort to really look at the latest in blood, heart, and lung research. This is really going to transform how we approach science in these areas. Best of luck, Ken and the team. Next slide. Now let's move on to drug device and diagnostic development. Next slide. A call out to our Harrington Discovery Institute and to Dr. Stamler. We want you to know that University Hospitals has the #1 drug discovery platform in the United States, discovering, translating, and curing patients, new medicines through breakthrough clinical trials, focusing on brain health, COVID, rare disease, and major diseases like cancer and cardiovascular disease. We fund researchers across the US, Canada, and the UK. We've spun out 31 companies. We have 18 drugs right now in advanced clinical trial. Excuse me. Since I last talked to you, we now have 5 rare disease scholars as part of our Oxford Harrington program, looking at new therapeutics in Kennedy disease, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, lysosomal storage disease, and other metabolic disorders. We can't wait to report back to you with drugs now in phase 3 trial, our first FDA approval. Next slide. Also want to spend just a moment on great work through our tech transfer office and intellectual property efforts. As you can see here, in 2021, we had very important startup investments that have advanced. Lucid had initial public offering on NASDAQ, and Rodeo Therapeutics was acquired by Amgen. Great work by Amitabh Chak, Joe Willis, and many others, Sandy Markowitz on the Rodeo and the Lucid efforts. So great work from our GI team taking drugs into the clinic. Next slide. And finally, a real shout out for the future. Leo Bittencourt, who was recruited from Brazil, has founded our Radiology AI and Diagnostic Innovation Collaborative. In one of the most exciting studies that I've seen in a while, working with ASMED, our radical CLE, our AI group, worked and led to FDA approval of a new AI for fracture detection. AI increased the accuracy greater than 7%, and most importantly, reduced the turnaround time in the emergency room by 27%. This is one of just 30 different collaborations in AI, and we're really excited to see how Radical will change the way we care for patients going forward. Next slide. Now, what about clinical research, our pharma and clinical trials led by our VP, Grace McComsey? Next slide. Well, a shout out here to Rose Gubituzzi-Klug, awarded $7 million from the National Institute of Diabetes from NIH for further funding of now a 40-year study of type 1 diabetic patients following over 1,400 adolescents and young adults with type 1 diabetes. UHCMC has been a center and rainbow in the study for a number of years and now funded again. Great work. Next slide. As many of you know, UH has been a leader in the long COVID efforts. Grace was one of only 15 long COVID sites funded in the United States, receiving over $17 million. I'm happy to report out to you, UH enrolled the first patient. We are the #1 enrolling site nationally. We're the first site to complete target enrollment, and very, very pleased to announce that as a consequence of this incredible work by Grace's team, we've been asked to increase enrollment by an additional 300 plus patients, guaranteeing that we will receive additional funding beyond the 17 million. This is really important because, as many of you know, 20% of women and 10% of men in the United States have long COVID. We need research in this area to understand what is the course of this disease and what are the new treatments available. So great work, Grace. Next slide. And finally, I want to conclude with our latest research area, health outcomes and health services research. Next slide. Really a shout out here to Elie Sade and his team from Corvitz, the Cleveland, Ohio respiratory virus vaccine effectiveness across traditional risk factors and social determinants of health. Dr. Sade and his team were awarded $12.5 million by the CDC, with potential for another $8 million to look at the effectiveness not only of the flu vaccine, but also the COVID vaccines. Ellie's team includes investigators from UH, the VA, and Case Western. This is really going to help us understand how can we be more effective at protecting our communities in the future. Next slide. Also, a shout out to Gautam Rao for his new Center to Improve Clinical Diagnosis, a $4 million grant over 4 years from the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, one of only 7 institutions within this consortium to develop a 4-step strategy to identify the best practice for diagnostic evaluation of common conditions prone to diagnostic error. This is really very important initiative. Next slide. And finally, I want to conclude with our new UH Center for Health Services Research. Really want to thank Marlene Miller for leading a new strategic plan that will focus on health equity, population and community health, methodologic excellence, primary and chronic care delivery, patient experience, care aligned with national priorities, and importantly, training and education. We have now over $30 million in annual funding in health services and health outcomes research. This is our fastest growing area, and we're very excited to announce that we'll be doing a national search for a new director for this center. Next slide. And finally, just a few education highlights. New leadership in Ken Simons as our VP of Education and DIO. Ken will be joining us, a national figure from the Medical College of Wisconsin on November 1st. We also want to offer congratulations to our 4 new ACGME accredited fellowships. Rita Merman will be leading regional anesthesia and acute pain, Michael DeGiorgia, neurocritical care, Alejandro Rivas, neurooncology, and Matt Morman, a fellowship in surgical critical care. These are essential for our pipeline for the future, and we want to congratulate these leaders. And finally, a tremendous amount of work, Beth Harcher, Tom Maurer, Charlie Lopresti, Keith Armitage, and many others, Susan Budnick, successful transitioning of our St. Vincent's residents to UH. 50 plus St. Vincent's residents will be coming here to complete their training with the closure of their inpatient services, 35 to UHCMC, 6 to regionals, 9 to St. John Medical Center, with our final class graduating in June of 2025. These residents will have seamless, uninterrupted training and will start here November 16th. Please welcome them when you see them on the wards. Next slide. And finally, academic marketing, great teams working on our UH alumni portal. Want you to all think about zooming in or coming live for our UH Research and Innovation Day on December 5th. We've started a new podcast series that launched in September of 2022. And I have to tell you, the first podcast is really thrilling. From MMA fighter to radiation oncologist, a conversation with our very own Dr. Dan Spratt. You don't want to miss that. Next slide. And then finally, because today, very much today, we will be celebrating this afternoon at Ford Auditorium, a congratulations to our 52 new senior CWRU promotions at the associate professor and the professor level. This is one of the greatest accomplishments in one's career, and we are so proud of these 52 individuals and want to shout out to our very own Dr. Marjorie Greenfield, our Chief Academic Development and Promotions Officer, who's taken this on with a love and a passion to help mentor and to help get our faculty promoted. Thank you, and thank all of our chairs.